The point of today's talk is the triple bottom line. Triple bottom line means businesses that put equal emphasis on people, planet, and profit. Another portion that really wasn't part of the title, but I'm going to talk about anyway, is the idea of localism. There's lots of research, but I'm going to particularly point out a video that was done by the Royal Society of Arts. RSA is a division of the government of Great Britain. They're sort of tasked, I guess, with telling the government what's happening down the road. So they did a global research. And this is supported by lots of other research specifically in this country. But if we think our politics is divided right now, so are consumers. And they don't talk to one another any more than our politicians do. And it's split on roughly, and again, this is a global number, but very accurate in the United States. It's roughly a 60-40 split. And let me describe these. And they came up with these names that I really dislike, but they're theirs, so I'll use them. You have the traditionalists. And the traditionalists are all about the discount. They represent 60% of the market. They're your Walmart shopper. They're your Groupon shopper. You know, it's like if they came to your establishment and got a 50% discount last week, if you want them to come back next week, you better offer them 70%. They have zero loyalty. They don't care about quality. They don't care about service. They want the discount. They're not your market. And so let me talk about your market who, and again, I don't like the name, the neos. They're also, and one of the things I'll mention, I know some of you are already up, I have a list of links here, as I may reference some of it, but it's a great way if you want to do further research on what I'm sort of talking about. So the 40% of the market, and this kind of crosses all sorts of demographic lines, you know, income, all of those sorts of things, but it's people who shop based on their values. And so what it explains is, why does a young couple who just does not have a pot to piss in cancel cable TV because they want to afford to give their children only organic yogurt? You know, and so that's a little bit about what we're talking about. And I'll talk a little bit more about it, but why I think it's important for everyone in this room that your sole market is the neos, and I'll explain. I think this is true for all small businesses. You can't compete on price. And it's not that neos don't like deals. The jeans I'm wearing, I bought on sale. You know, so I'm not saying, you know, that they don't like deals, but they will pay for things that match their values. And I think that's really a crucial thing to understand. But think of yourself as a consumer. Every time you take out your wallet and you're spending money, you're voting. You're voting for the kind of world you want to have. So where and how you spend your money matters. It matters a lot. And your customers understand this, and they want to connect with you based on their values. And so they want to know what your values are. And that's like a big deal. It's important. Most people, when they sort of start thinking about their values, they tend to come to food first. People really start to understand that what they eat affects their health. That's happening, you know, more and more. So that's the in me part, you know. And so, you know, organic yogurt, you know, Stonyfield, third largest, you know, yogurt brand in the world, organic, you know. And so the next thing is on me. So you're now eating organic, maybe you're doing grass-fed beef, whatever you're doing. And then somebody might say, and a good story about that, I was just house sitting for some good friends, quite wealthy. She's a cancer survivor, and she's bragging to me about how her child has never eaten anything but organic. Now, I go into their cabinets while I'm staying there for the cleaning products, not so organic. So her stage of evolution is in me. She hasn't gotten to the on me part, which maybe that's the makeup you put on this morning, how you shampooed, that kind of thing. So that's the on me portion. The final thing, the final stage through people's evolution along this path is around me. Those are the people with the solar panels on their home or business. Those are the people driving a Prius or something like that. They're having that more consciousness of those things around them. But so it's important now, you can look at yourself and say, where am I in this process? And again, no judgment, you are where you are. But this is a way for you to be talking directly to your customers and engaging them on where they are on the process. Localism. One of the things, we hear a lot of talk about small business. I tend not to like the term small business because I think it's pejorative. I think a lot of independent businesses are rocking the world, and you don't have to be small to rock, you might be small, but you don't have to be. So I prefer the term locally owned and independent is the term I happen to like. Oftentimes you'll hear folks say, oh yeah, I shop local, I went down to the Walmart down the street. And so I wanted to find at Rethink Local, in a large part, what we mean by locally owned. And our definition, there's actually a 5-part thing. I'm only going to focus on one part of it. What I think is really the main thing is that 51% of the equity in a business lives in the Mid-Hudson Valley. That's how we define local. And why do we think equity matters? If we went to, say, one of the chain pharmacies, I'm certain they pay their pharmacists a decent salary. I'm sure they make a good living. Now, let's refer to my grandfather, who was a pharmacist who owned his own business. When you own your own business, there's a multiplier factor that happens with the equity. And that's where middle-class wealth has historically come from in this country, is lots and lots of people owning small businesses. When you come time to retire, maybe you're able to sell it, which my grandfather did, and he had a nice retirement. He worked like till his 80s, but he's still retired. And so that's where wealth in America has historically come from. And so that pharmacist who's making a nice salary at one of the chains isn't generating that wealth. They're generating a nice income, but not that middle-class wealth. And we think that's really important. And it's one reason why we're so excited by locally owned independent businesses. And so one of the things Rethink Local has done, there's been lots of research done, and again, I have full results here, but I'll just give you some highlights, on the benefits to a local economy when you shop at independent establishments. But that was all statistics from, Salt Lake City or somewhere else. So we did the first study here in the Mid-Hudson Valley. And what's interesting is retailers will circulate dollars 4 times more when you shop at a local retailer versus a chain. That big sucking sound you hear is dollars leaving the Hudson Valley. Restaurants will circulate 2.5 times more when you shop at the Village Tea Room. And so, and one of the big programs we're going to be focusing on, where we need an executive director, before we can really launch it, but it's going to be a Go Local program that's going to focus on getting all of us, both businesses and individuals, to shift 10% of the money we spend at non-locally owned businesses to locally owned businesses. Now let me describe, and this is based on census data, a 10% shift in spending in the Mid-Hudson Valley would generate, wait for it, $475 million in new revenue in the Mid-Hudson Valley. I mean, I just say that number and I get goosebumps, you know? And that's not really, you know, we're not asking you to shift everything. We're saying 10%. We can all do a little bit better. And I think that's incredibly exciting. So, you know, I'll just sort of briefly talk about some of the trends in the triple bottom line world. You know, and one of the things that I think is exciting is 2-3 years ago, if I said the words triple bottom line or localism, no one in the Mid-Hudson Valley would know what we were talking about. Now everyone's beginning to understand this, and I think it's important because there's that 40% of people that want more business to cater to them, and that 40% is growing. I think at some point it'll be a 60-40 split the other way. It'll take time, but I really believe that's coming. So one of the trends that's happening now, I'm sure you've all seen certified organic or certified free trade. Well, people are, what's happened, and this is one of the things, you all have to like raise your hand and promise me you won't do this. One of the things that's a real problem that has given this whole movement kind of at times a bad name is the idea, there's a term called greenwashing, which is when a big company comes out and makes all sorts of promises how great they are, and it's just BS, and everyone knows it, you know, kind of thing. And so a lot of consumers, you as consumers, just kind of get jaded. You're like, oh, you know, that's all a bunch of hooey. And so one of the things that's happening is now there's all these certifications, particularly product certifications. The problem is there's 400 of them. I live in this world and I'm confused. And so that's a bit of a challenge. Now, one of the cases is there are company-wide certifications. There's it's a little confusing. New York State, we passed a law in the state of New York where, and I think there's, I won't get the number exactly right, but it's around 20 to 25 states now have what are called benefit corporation laws. Or if you don't feel like reincorporating yourself, you can come certified by B-Lab, which is a national not-for-profit. They're working globally. There's 1,000 certified B corporations. So the idea is they're not certifying your product. They're certifying all that you do as a company. So it's a third party, and they actually come in and audit you. Now, if you're a manufacturer, they might be there for, 3 days. When for my, solo advisory business, we sat for an hour or two, then went to lunch. So it's a little, but you really do, and it gets harder every year, and they do audit you, and it's the real deal. So it will become the good housekeeping seal of approval for companies going forward. Two things that I think are really important. One is it's a process. It's not like a switch where you're one way one day and you're going to be totally different the next day. And I don't know if any of you know the magazine The Nation, based in New York, very progressive magazine. They wanted to make a big strides in this direction. So we went through kind of an extensive process with them, and we came up with a 60-point plan. Now, it took them 5 years to work through that plan rather diligently. And so the point being is that it's not going to happen overnight. You can, in the same way that I'm sure WETC is encouraging you to have some kind of business plan, that you can come up with some of your goals around triple bottom line, your social environmental values, and you can have a second, you have a one-page business plan on how to make money, then you can have a one-page business plan on how to, integrate your values in, and then you can work on that over time. It may be that you don't, there's some low-hanging fruit. You're not recycling your office paper. You could go do that tomorrow, Now, there's some things that might be harder. You own a building and you'd like to put solar on it. Well, you don't have the cash on hand today. Well, that's fine, as long as you can work it into a plan that happens over time. So, and then the other thing is, some of the early adopters in this world, some of the famous folks, Ben and Jerry, Anita Roddick of The Body Shop, they got into some trouble early on because they were a little bit sanctimonious about what they were doing, and that really got them kind of fried in the business press. And so what most folks are really learning is that it's not like, oh, I've got it all figured out, I'm perfect, I know everything. It's much more when you're communicating to your customers to say, I'm on the path, here's where I am, here's where I hope to go, let's have a conversation and let's go there together. And customers respond really well to that, and it also protects you from never sort of being preachy or, that kind of thing. So I would leave you with that. Anyway, thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Agnes Devereaux. I am the owner of the Village Tea Room Restaurant and Bake Shop in New Paltz, which is in Ulster County, across the river. This September 1st, we'll be celebrating 10 years in business, which is a big deal for a restaurant. I wanted to tell you that just recently, we won 10 Best Sustainable Green Restaurants in the Catskill region. And we were nominated by Edible Hudson Valley for their Local Hero Award, which just came out in the spring issue. And we got nominated by the Nature Conservancy for the People's Choice Nature's Plate Awards this year. So it's pretty cool. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from Ireland, and I came to the United States when I was 21 actually. And I came as an illegal immigrant working in restaurants in New York City. I arrived on a Friday and I had a job at an Irish restaurant by Wednesday. And I worked in the restaurant business, and I eventually got a green card, and I went to school and became an interior designer, and I had an interior design business in New York City. And my husband and I lived in Borum Hill, and we read an article in the Atlantic Monthly about Waldorf education, and we said, this is what we want for our kids. And then I got pregnant again, and we realized we couldn't afford a Waldorf education in New York City. So we did a little internet search, and we discovered New Paltz, and that's why we moved here. We came here for the Waldorf school. And afterwards, we realized that we ended up in this community because a community that can support a Waldorf school has people who have the same values that we do. The importance of nature, the importance of seasons, the value of people. And we didn't intend to open a restaurant. We bought a house, a commercially zoned house in the middle of the village so our kids could walk to school. And it came with a little two-family house that was rented out to students in the back. That was the former tailor shop of Aldert Schoonmaker from 1833. Had some additions put on in the 70s. And my husband was a TV news cameraman in New York City, and he was commuting. And he was offered a buyout at that time, and we decided to reevaluate. And we thought it'd be a brilliant idea to open up a restaurant in New Paltz that celebrated all the farms in the area. When we moved here 13 years ago, there wasn't a single restaurant or a store in New Paltz where you could buy local food or even an apple. and we were surrounded by apple orchards. And I came from working at Union Square Cafe in New York City, right in the middle of the biggest farmers market in New York City. And I was so thrilled to be moving to the Hudson Valley where all of these farmers were coming from, yet there I was in the village and I couldn't get anything. So we opened a restaurant with a plan originally to just be a tea shop. And then we did demo on the inside of the building, and we discovered that we were keeping the skin of a 200-year-old building and building a new restaurant inside it. And we couldn't afford to be selling tea and scones. We would have to be a full-scale restaurant. And so we changed our business plan. I worked with the New York Business Development Corp. And Miriam Bouchard was a free service, and she helped me write my business plan. I wrote it in 3 months, and we built the restaurant in about 5 months. And I also got a loan from Riverside Bank in Poughkeepsie to make that happen. And we were full of hopes and dreams, and we had this wonderful concept that I brought from Europe, that people would come from a dinner, and it would be like, come for dinner, and it would be like going to a friend's house for a dinner party. You don't decide what you're eating. You just go, and there would this be a wonderful 3-course meal, and it would be local and organic, and you would just sit down and enjoy it, and that did not fly at all. Because some people are gluten-free, and some are vegans, and some just want soup, and so quickly we changed our plan and we did a traditional a la carte menu. And I was really forced to reassess and realize that we weren't just going to make it if I just stuck to my original idea. During lunch, we also started with self-service, which was also a disaster. We had a lot of elderly guests walking around with trays of boiling hot water and teapots, shaking. And we changed to table service. We are open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we do afternoon tea as well. So our busiest times can be very odd, not traditional lunch and dinner times. We can sometimes be very busy in the late afternoon. From my background in Ireland, I'm from a family of 6 kids, and my parents had a hotel in a small village in Ireland. The idea is called a guest house, doesn't really exist anymore, but it's a small hotel, family run. My mother did all the cooking, and she was a farmer's daughter. My father was actually a bookkeeper, and I grew up in that house. I was actually born in number 9 because my mother had all home births, and she didn't want to clean her bedroom for the midwife, so she always moved into one of the guest rooms for the birth. And later, when I was a teenager, number 9 was my room because my parents went to B&B as they got older. And a lot of my values come from my parents. They were very religious, very Catholic, and I didn't get any of the religious part, but I did get a lot of the morality of I would say being good to your employees and an honesty about food. My mother did come to the United States once ever, and it was very hard to bring her out to eat because I think it's hard to fool a farmer's daughter about food. She's not impressed by big white plates with dots of sauces and tiny microgreens placed with tweezers. She likes good, honest food. And I think that's something that I got from her. I think specifically our food at my restaurant is very unpretentious. I think that I say that our food is everything from duck confit to dingle pies. Now, duck confit might sound fancy to some Americans, but to French people, it's peasant food. And dingle pies are little meat pies from Ireland. And we serve basically elevated peasant food from cultures all over the world. When you come in for dinner, you sit at the table. We have Italian breadsticks with Indian dal as a dip. You can get duck confit, or you could get a mushroom bread pudding. You could have a cream puff. You could just have a pot of tea. We wanted to be very approachable and very unpretentious. That is part of my my background growing up. My mother was very influential, despite my resisting it for my entire life. She was an accomplished cook. She bought everything from local farmers because that was the only way you did it. She didn't think she was at the forefront of localism. She just thought she was doing what you're supposed to do. At the time, when I was a teenager, all I wanted was processed food, and I couldn't understand why you couldn't have sliced bread like everybody else. We had a pig farm also, and my mother made blood puddings, which totally grossed me out, and now I think is a total delicacy. And so she used up everything, and she was never wasteful. I also lived in Paris for 2 years before I came to New York. I was an au pair, and I was studying French, and that was a big influence on me in terms of food. I worked for a family where I did all of their marketing, and I don't know if you've ever been to a market in Paris, but it's very intimidating. You're supposed to know all the different qualities between the 15 varieties of artichokes that are for sale. And if you don't speak up quickly, they'll just move along. And I'd never even eaten an artichoke or seen an artichoke before that. And it's the first time I ate asparagus, and it was an amazing experience in terms of food. And I went from Paris to New York, where I was very disappointed with the food. You know, there was all these amazing Korean markets with these perfect looking red apples all lined up in towers, and then they all tasted really, really bad. And I ended up working at Union Square Cafe, where I discovered the farmers market, and that was a real eye-opener for me, and I became a devout follower of the farmers market. When we opened up the restaurant, I really wanted to be a reflection of me, my cultural background, my interests, my food preferences, and at the same time bend and give a little bit to the community that I was in. And I wanted to cater to people who are gluten-free, who are vegan, who are in the community, and still stay true to my food values and what I felt about food. And that was a journey. It didn't all fall into place right away. Since we've opened, I've refinanced 3 times. We do own the whole property, and we have plans to expand in the future. But in the past few years, we've expanded into catering. Last year, we did 10 weddings, and this year we've booked 15 so far, and we're still meeting people every weekend who are coming up from New York City to have a farm-to-table Hudson Valley experience. And to go back to what Ajax was saying about branding the Hudson Valley, and that Willie was also talking about, I'm on the board of the Hudson Valley Restaurant Week, and our mission is for people to understand that the Hudson Valley is synonymous with good food and good restaurants and farms. And there are amazing products being made in the Hudson Valley. Sprout Creek Farm in Poughkeepsie is making world-class cheeses. People are making world-class wines. People are making charcuteries and bacon. And recently, the Huffington Post did a taste test between grass-fed beef and corn-fed beef, and it was the movable beast beef that won for the grass-fed beef burger, and they're a local beef company. So I think the word is getting out there about the Hudson Valley, because when people come here, they're traveling here for the food also. One of the examples that I like to give about the values that we have and the integrity that we have in our restaurant is we have a cake that we make at the restaurant that we're pretty well known for. We do it as wedding cakes. We sell it in the restaurant. It's called the honeybee cake. And it has a finish on it that makes it look like it's honeycomb dripping with honey. And inside it's an orange chiffon cake, and the buttercream is a bright yellow color, and that color comes from farm eggs. And we buy Featheridge farm eggs, which is a very high-end egg, for everything we do in our bake shop, but then we buy specifically from farmers who allow their chickens to go out and eat bugs and things like that. We buy their eggs because the yolks are so orange. And then we make a classic French buttercream with honey and egg yolks. And a classic French buttercream is totally different to the stuff that's the recipe on the back of the Domino confectioner sugar box. And it's a very creamy, luscious texture and flavor. I mean, actually has flavor. It's not just, sweetness. And we use Cabot butter, which is very high quality butter. And sometimes in the winter when it's really freezing, chickens stop laying eggs. And I had a new baker, and we didn't have any farm eggs. And she said to me, let's just put a few drops of food coloring in. Nobody will ever know. And I said to her, we can't do that because then we have no integrity. And that's what people are coming here for. They're coming here for our integrity when it comes to food. They know that when we say the mesclun came from Pete Talaferro's farm yesterday, it did. And we just can't make those kind of substitutions. And I think instead it's important to educate people and say, oh, it's not as bright yellow because it's wintertime and chickens don't lay in the cold. So that's why it's not as bright as it normally is. Social media is something that I like doing and I'm very comfortable with. I post things almost every single day for the restaurant. I use Instagram a lot. I do have 2 teenagers and that really helps with that kind of stuff. And it's been really useful. I used to send out newsletters and I've just switched basically to doing social media. And we have a very active Facebook page. We get a lot of interaction from our customers. People place orders through Facebook email because they see that I'm on there because it's connected through my phone. And yesterday somebody ordered 25 chocolate mousses for Saturday on Facebook. So it's very interactive and it's not some dead page there. It's my opinions, it's my pictures, and it really helps to show people what we're doing. Hudson Valley Restaurant Week has also been a really good association for us because it is unique to the Hudson Valley that the Restaurant Week is about promoting local ingredients. Restaurant weeks throughout the country do not have any connection with local food. And we encourage all the restaurants to participate, and some do it to a greater or lesser extent, to promote local food. And we have an event where all the restaurants that participate are invited to come, along with the media, and a whole bunch of local producers who'd be interested in selling to restaurants, like cheesemakers, winemakers, foie gras, all kinds of people, Continental Organics, and now, of course, spirits are very big as part of the local movement. I have not been able to give profit sharing to any of my employees. I have about 21 employees, and 4 of them are full-time. And so I have a lot of part-time students working at the restaurant. And part of the people portion has been that I've discovered that the best employees for me, especially in the kitchen, are people who have no food experience and almost no cooking experience, who are really, really interested in learning. I have not had a great experience with culinary school graduates. My present sous chef started off as a waitress 7 years ago. And after she worked for us for a year, she told me she was going to enroll in the CIA because she became very interested in food. And so I told her to not do that because I would pay her to learn. And so she started off as a prep cook, which means she just comes in and does prep for dinner, like peeling potatoes and carrots and dicing onions and stuff. And then she became a lunch cook, and then she became the sous chef. And she's the person running the show at the restaurant right now, and she's amazing. Before her, I had a young woman who was one of our first waitresses we hired. She was from Louisiana. She was a devout vegan, and she became completely obsessed with food after working at the restaurant. She started in the kitchen in the same trajectory, and she ended up volunteering at Brook Farm in New Paltz. She participated in the butchering of a cow. She found it the most exhilarating experience of her life, and she went on to do a Master's of Gastronomy, specializing in meat at Boston University. So we've converted a lot of vegans. At the moment, Jimmy, who is my lunch cook, started off when he was 14. He's from Clintondale, and he worked as a dishwasher. He went away to school, and every holidays he came back and worked in the kitchen. And then he graduated, and he discovered that he really wasn't interested in philosophy, and he is now our lunch cook. So I have found that the people who are willing to learn, who are passionate about food, and who care about the ingredients are the best fit for my place. I like people to feel that they have the experience of eating home cooking when they come to my restaurant, not restaurant food. And I think a lot of the techniques that you can learn in culinary school separate you from home cooking, and there's a lot of indoctrination. It's almost like being in the military when you go to cooking school, so it's hard to undo that when they come to us. So I want to talk a little bit about the profit part of it. We opened in September of 2004, and every year we have shown growth in sales. Significantly, from 2008 to 2009, we had an increase of 11%. This was during the Great Recession, and the whole media was full of doom and gloom, and we did very well that year. And looking back, we were thinking that part of the success of that was I worked during the last recession at Union Square Cafe, and Danny Meyer made a very particular point of saying when people go out to a restaurant, they want to escape their real life. They're going to eat, they're not going to do the dishes, you're creating a unique environment for them, and he didn't want anybody talking about the economy. So while restaurants around us were offering recession specials, we did not offer anything like that or ever even mention it. Part of the changing of the menu that we did was, although we have a dinner menu and we have a la carte entrees, we also offer light fare now throughout the evening. So what we saw was a change in the way people were ordering. So people were coming in and getting the light fare, or so having sandwiches and soup in the evening, because they knew they could still go out and escape the doom and gloom for a little bit, but they were still getting quality food, but it wasn't costing them as much. Unlike other caterers, we are not a full-service caterer. We offer one thing, which is the experience that you get at the restaurant, a farm-to-table, unpretentious food. And so if people come looking for a Mexican-themed wedding, we don't do that. We partnered up with a local organic apple farm, and it's been a really great relationship for us because he has a lot of clients who are looking for a farm experience. They're getting married in a barn in the middle of an orchard, and the kind of food that we offer works well with that kind of experience. In 2009, we explored the idea of becoming a certified green restaurant. And so we went through the whole process of that, and we had to fill a certain criteria. But it turned out you have to pay $1,800 a year to be a certified green restaurant. And I decided it wasn't worth it just to have that certification, but it was certainly valuable to look at our practices and see what we were doing and what we could add to what we were doing. And one of the criteria for the green restaurant certification is that once you get it, you need to set goals for each year so that you continue to be green, so that you set new goals for yourself to be better. So some of the things that we did was, well, we have a permit at the local dump, and we bring all our cardboard recycling there. We get waxed cardboard boxes that our vegetables come in, and we bring them back to local farmers. We never use styrofoam. We've never used plastic bottles. We only sell in cans or glass bottles. We don't use waxed milk containers. Our whole building is actually recycled. Our floors are covered in linoleum, which is actually a very green product made from linseed oil and flax and has antibacterial components. The counter was made out of original floorboards. The wine shelves were recycled floorboards. All of the doors came from a secondhand place in Kingston. The front deck was made from recycled material. All of our bulbs are low-energy fluorescent. Offering vegetarian, vegan, and gluten-free was a part of that. Having a children's menu is important. We also have small plates and tapas. We buy from local farms, orchards, and dairies. We serve organic food and beverages. We serve local beer and artisanal spirits. Our cooking oil is grapeseed, which is probably the most sustainable oil that you can use because it's pressed out of the seeds of grapes, which is a byproduct of the winemaking industry. We serve hormone and antibiotic-free meat. We serve hormone antibiotic-free humanely slaughtered chicken. We use local farm eggs. And finally, we have recycled toilet paper. And then what we asked of our staff after going through this process was to ask them to be mindful of this, to show them all of these things that we already did, and we asked them to tighten faucets. You know, people go into the bathroom, they don't shut the faucet fully, to be mindful of that. When they go to have a cup of coffee or a glass of water, to use a real cup or a real glass, not a throwaway one. To keep the refrigerator doors closed all the time if they want to take food. So in closing, I'd like to ask you all to go to my Facebook page and like us, because we will be celebrating 10 years on September 1st, and we're having a big party, and you're all invited.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.